If you're looking over your fantasy roster right now and you're feeling really good about your matchup in week 17, I need you to do me one favor. Wake up! You should never have those feelings about your fantasy matchup. Put in the work. Let's get ready to go. This is the most important running back video that you're gonna watch all year long. Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? We're diving into my top 30 running backs, plus a few guys just on the outside looking in. And this week, the name of the game is fantasy points. Don't overthink it. Go with the good matchups. Follow the players that have gotten you here this far. Don't get too crazy with your lineups. We've got a fantasy championship to win. But before we start on that, I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. And the bad news is, a few weeks ago, I tried to give away an autographed Travis Etienne jersey, and the winner never claimed it. But the good news is, I'm gonna give it to one of you all. So if you're still here watching, awesome. Glad to hear it. But now you get a shot at an autographed Travis Etienne jersey. And it's super simple to get in on this giveaway. All you gotta do is head on over to pristineauction.com by using the link down in the description of this video. Create your free account and you're gonna get a $10 coupon that you can use towards your first purchase on their website. But it's also gonna enter you in this giveaway as well. And let me know down in the comments below, what is your fantasy record this season and how many fantasy championships are you playing for this week? We'll pick a random commenter that has signed up over at Pristine Auction to win this Travis Etienne jersey. All right, but enough of the sappy stuff. We got to get into the nitty gritty. Let's go ahead and break down my top 30 running backs. And I think you all know who's going to be at the top to kick things off. That is right, rolling with Christian McCaffrey and Kyren Williams, number 1 and number 2. In terms of safest running backs in the NFL right now, both of these guys are right up there at the tippity top. Christian McCaffrey is going to give you a ton of upside this week against Washington, and Kyren Williams is going to give you a super safe floor. He should run for a ton of yards against the Giants this week. At number 3, though, Travis Etienne may catch some of you off guard. Going up against Carolina, this is way too good of a matchup to pass up. I know Travis Etienne hasn't been the best fantasy asset down the stretch here for multiple reasons, and we've discussed all those reasons in the start and sit videos over the last couple of weeks. But this right here is the matchup going up against Carolina, who allows the 5th most fantasy points to the running back position that we need for our fantasy championships. Jonathan Taylor going up against Las Vegas is also going to have a solid matchup this week. I would expect Jonathan Taylor to be heavily involved. Who knows who the backup running back will be at this point, but it really doesn't matter because if JT is out there, JT is the main guy. Didn't see a ton of upside last week, unfortunately, but found the end zone, and going up against Las Vegas, we should have a shot at the end zone once again, plus the volume to go along with it. DeAndre Swift going up against Arizona. Arizona can't stop anybody on the ground. So even if DeAndre Swift runs for over 90 yards in this game and scores a touchdown, he's going to be top 10 potential. Now, is he going to have the upside of some of the other running backs that give you work in the passing game that he does not? Absolutely not. But if we're looking at floors this week, if we're looking at some of the safest plays, DeAndre Swift in his matchup certainly deserves to be up here. Rachaad White, now in terms of upside, like I just mentioned, you could say his upside is above DeAndre Swift and above Jonathan Taylor. But New Orleans is not the easiest of matchups. And New Orleans does a very good job of keeping running backs out of the end zone and also keeping running backs from making an impact in the passing game. The two areas where Rachaad White really needs to hit home on to give you the upside that we've seen so far this season. For Rachaad White, when we take a look at what his ceiling is this week against New Orleans, just look back to what he did earlier in the season when he had a tough time putting together even 100 total scrimmage yards and didn't find the end zone. I would expect Rachaad White to be bottled up on the ground a little bit again this week, even though the upside would still be there if he could find the end zone in this matchup. In terms of defending the run, Dallas's defense has slipped a little of late. They're all the way down to number 19 against the run now. And Jahmyr Gibbs has been extraordinary over the back half of the season here. He's got all the upside as any running back in the NFL. I am going a little bit lower because it is Dallas. And we have to wonder, number 1, will they be able to stop the run unlike they have been able to as of recent? And number 2, will they find themselves in a position where they put Detroit in a negative game script, and Detroit has to focus on passing it a little bit more. Even though Jahmyr Gibbs is still getting some work in the passing game, it's not a ton, and because of that, his upside could be a little bit limited this week. But you have to hope that he is the main back in this matchup and they find a way to get him out in open space, and that's going to create some explosive plays. Saquon Barkley against the LA Rams is going to be a pretty decent matchup. Not as high upside as maybe we would like, but still pretty decent going up against the Rams defense, currently ranked 13th against the run. However, they are allowing the third fewest fantasy points. But Saquon Barkley, volume is the name of the game this week, and knowing that there isn't a ton of high upside matches for the top running backs, Saquon Barkley finds himself pretty easily in the top 10, given the fact that he's going to get probably 20 touches in this game. Austin Ekeler going up against Denver is going to be a smash matchup for him. Will he deliver? That's yet to be seen, but we have to hope that not only will he find a little bit more volume this week, but maybe he can find the end zone once again. I am very high on him compared to the ECR right now. In fact, I've got him 11 spots higher than the consensus, but this matchup against the Denver Broncos to me just seems too good. And if Denver's going to start Jarrett Stidham, how is their offense going to look? Can the Chargers get a decent lead? Can they focus on running the football against a defense that has had trouble stopping the run? That's where our money is going to be made this week with Austin Ekeler. Raheem Mostert's matchup against Baltimore is going to be extremely tough. He's still the RB1 on that team, getting a majority of the volume. Hopefully we see some big explosive plays from him, even if the volume isn't exactly where we would like. And of course, if they can get themselves in the red zone, Raheem Mostert is almost a lock to score a touchdown. Kenneth Walker going up against Pittsburgh. Not a bad week last week, but an up and down week. He had some big explosive runs, but then he got tackled behind or at the line of scrimmage as well. Hopefully he can find some more consistency going up against Pittsburgh this week. Seattle's going to have to run the football against Pittsburgh. They're going to have to stay balanced. If they can do that, Kenneth Walker could find himself right in the area of 70 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. And Joe Mixon going up against Kansas City doesn't have the highest upside of everyone in the world right now, but hopefully he can find the end zone this week and hopefully they can run the football. Kansas City last week was doing a pretty decent job of limiting the run until the fourth quarter, and then they just could not stop Zamir White. Speaking of Zamir White, I've got him at number 13 going up against Indianapolis because everything I'm reading right now really feels like Josh Jacobs is not going to play this week. He was a non-participant on Wednesday in practice, and he hasn't really been practicing at all. And because of that, I believe Zamir White will end up being the starting running back once again in a really, really good matchup. Now, some running backs that we really feel like we would want to be able to trust at this point of the season. James Cook and Alvin Kamara. Unfortunately, their matchups are not the best matchups in the world. Now, James Cook, to me, has a better ceiling than Alvin Kamara, even if I don't love his floor all that much going up against New England. My hope is that Buffalo can get a nice size lead on New England and they can focus on running the football. And if they can do that, James Cook could have a pretty decent day. But I don't know if we're going to see the type of ceiling that we saw from a couple of weeks ago. And for Alvin Kamara against Tampa Bay, I'm pretty low on him this week going up against a Tampa Bay front that has done a very good job of stopping the run this season. And Alvin Kamara has not been very good running the football. I mentioned it in my start and sit video. He's just not seeing the targets right now that he saw at the beginning of the year when he came back from his suspension. Why? I have absolutely no idea, because he should still be seeing those targets. If we could get him up towards double-digit targets this week, then he could be inside the top 12. But unfortunately, from what we've seen recently, I just don't think that's going to happen. Javonte Williams against the Chargers doesn't have a ton of upside for me, but the Chargers are ranked 17th against the run right now and 24th in fantasy points allowed to the running back position. Javonte Williams has a really nice floor for me. Given the fact that they're changing from Russell Wilson, I would expect them to lean on the running game a little bit more this week. Bijan's got a really tough matchup going up against Chicago. Do they stop running backs on the ground? Absolutely they do, but they allow a ton of receptions and a ton of receiving yards through the air to running backs. Now, my concern is that Arthur Smith just isn't smart enough to utilize Bijan Robinson in that way. And he's just going to try and pound the football. And that's not what we need to do with Bijan Robinson this week. Get him in open space. Game plan for him to have a huge day against Chicago, and it could happen. But if you're going to try and outsmart everybody in the world, including yourself, Bijan's not going to have that good of a day. And Zeke Elliott going up against Buffalo at number 18 for me. Zeke isn't going to give me a whole lot of upside on the ground, but he is the most targeted player since Bailey Zappi took over at quarterback. And because of that, if New England finds themselves behind Buffalo, we could find ourselves with quite a few targets and some decent floor for Zeke Elliott, especially in PPR leagues. At number 19, CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and with no Jerick McKinnon and possibly no Isaiah Pacheco, it could be the CEH show going up against Cincinnati. Now, I'm putting CEH at 19 for his floor. This is what I believe his floor is this week. If there's no Jerick McKinnon and there's no Isaiah Pacheco, I really believe CEH slots right in here at number 19 as a safe floor. But if we want to talk about ceiling, I honestly could see CEH's ceiling going all the way up to RB12 on the week. That is definitely some high upside play and a really good matchup for CEH. Now keep an eye on Isaiah Pacheco. If for some reason he is activated and plays this week, then Isaiah Pacheco is going to shoot up into the top 15 for me. But if CEH ends up being by himself, he will shoot up a few spots going up against a Cincinnati defense that is currently ranked 26th against the run. At number 20, Devin Singletary against Tennessee. Not a super high ceiling for me, but he ran very well against Tennessee in their matchup just a couple of weeks ago, so he's got a really nice floor. Breece Hall at number 21. I would love to go higher with him, coming off a huge game last week, but Cleveland's defense, paired with his inconsistencies this season, I've got to leave him down here just at the low-end RB2 range. Could he hit a couple of big runs or a couple of big pass catches? Absolutely. Could he get 7, 8, 9, possibly 10 targets in a game and have a really nice floor? Absolutely. But if we're talking in terms of floor and upside, his floor is right in this area with his pass catching work. His ceiling could end up putting him inside the top 15, but I'm just not willing to risk it over some of the options in front of him that just have better matchups and a more clear path to consistent production. Ty Chandler at number 22. I really like his matchup against Green Bay this week. My only concern is how many touches will Alexander Mattison get? If Alexander Mattison is limited to 5 or 6 touches, then Ty Chandler to me is probably a top 15 running back. But will Minnesota be able to stay out in front of Green Bay? Will Green Bay be leading the game? Minnesota is going to have to run the football. We don't know if Jordan Addison is going to be playing as of yet. And of course, TJ Hawkinson is going to be out. So Ty Chandler could end up going much higher for me. 22 is going to be his floor though. If you're looking for upside, he does have a little bit more upside over the likes of maybe a Devin Singletary, a CEH, a Zeke Elliott, maybe even a Bijan Robinson, maybe even Javonte Williams. Several of the guys in front of him may not have the ceiling that he does, but with Alexander Mattison lurking and the possibility that Minnesota is playing from behind, I'm just worried that Ty Chandler gets the amount of volume that we would need to push him even higher. At number 23, Jerome Ford against the New York Jets. Jerome Ford has been a low-end RB2 for a majority of the season. He's shown us some high upside performances, but how much upside will we see this week against the Jets? We really need to get him working in the passing game again, and we need him to find the end zone. Right now, floor-wise, again, Jerome Ford is right here. And maybe you're seeing a little bit of a pattern with my rankings. Right now, I'm really ranking based on floor. Why is that? It's fantasy championship week. We don't need to get crazy. We need to take a look at what players give us the best opportunities to score points. That's what we want this week. We want really nice floors. We don't want to get crazy with it. And that's why my rankings this week are focusing on floors a little bit more. Derrick Henry at number 24. If we're talking about floors, I don't love his floor this week. Derrick Henry's floor is going to be better than a couple of weeks ago against Arizona where he only ran for like 9 yards. I definitely think that he could play a little bit better this week, but unfortunately, it's the same song and dance with Tennessee. If you find yourself down or a negative game script, Tennessee is going to have Tyjae Spears on the field, and going up against Houston, especially if CJ Stroud can make it back this week, I definitely could see Derrick Henry off the field more than we would like. At number 25, Aaron Jones going up against Minnesota. Minnesota really, really good on the ground. Aaron Jones is going to have to find himself in space this week, and he's going to have to find himself working in the passing game to have any type of upside. Tony Pollard going up against Detroit's defense, which is currently ranked number 1 against the run. Detroit, even though they've had some issues in the air stopping the pass, on the ground, they are ranked 4th against the run and allowing the fewest fantasy points on the season to the running back position. They have absolutely shut down running backs. In terms of a floor, Tony Pollard doesn't have much of a floor this week, especially if he can't find the end zone. But the biggest issue for Tony Pollard is that Rico Dowdle has been getting more and more red zone touches, taking away the opportunities that Tony Pollard would need to reach a better ceiling. Chuba Hubbard's getting Jacksonville, who is really good against the run at times, and because of that, he just doesn't have the type of ceiling or floor that I would want to move him any higher. David Montgomery might surprise you all the way down at number 28, and his style of play just doesn't match up with what Dallas does well. David Montgomery is probably going to get 15 carries, but he's going to have to score a touchdown, and even if he does score a touchdown, low-end RB2 status is really all I'm willing to go with him, because I really don't expect more than maybe 60 or 65 rushing yards. James Conner is going to get Philadelphia. Now, James Conner has played really well against some good defenses as of late, so maybe he has himself another solid day here, but if we're looking at his floor in such a tough matchup, we're going to be right in this area. And at number 30, Najee Harris going up against Seattle. This is a pretty good matchup for Najee Harris, and he could definitely have a little bit of a higher ceiling, but having Jaylen Warren lurking right behind him with such a higher upside than what he does definitely hurts his ranking. All right, let's jump into just a few guys who are currently missing the top 30. Devon Achane right now going up against Buffalo. It is a really, really tough matchup, and he just hasn't been utilized or been running as explosive as he did earlier in the season. Jaylen Warren against Seattle definitely has a lot of upside this week. In fact, his upside for me is inside the top 20 running backs. But if we're talking about floors, like I said earlier in the episode, Jaylen Warren for me, because Najee Harris is going to get so many touches, Jaylen Warren just doesn't have the floor that we would need to make him a locked-in fantasy starter. Gus Edwards at number 33. Miami's been very good against the run. This is probably going to be a pass-heavy game. Gus Edwards is going to have to find the end zone to give us any type of a floor this week. Khalil Herbert against Atlanta is going to also be a tough matchup on the ground. Who knows what we're going to get from D'Onta Foreman, if he plays or if he doesn't. And we also don't know how much work that Roschon Johnson could get. Khalil Herbert had a really great game last week, but it was against an inferior rush defense. And Antonio Gibson at number 35 going up against San Francisco. We know there's going to be no Chris Rodriguez. Does Brian Robinson come back? This matchup sucks. So even if it's Antonio Gibson on his own, his floor still is not that good. Well, there you have it, Headliner Nation. My top 30 running backs, a few guys just on the outside looking in, and all the information that you need to get your RB possession set and ready to roll for your fantasy championship. Hit that like button for me, subscribe if you're new here, and also turn on the bell notification so you know when we go live or when we drop new content. And don't forget to get entered into our giveaway for that autographed Travis Etienne jersey. Just go get signed up over at Pristine Auction by using the link down in our description, and make sure you leave a comment on this video. Good luck, Headliner Nation. Hopefully you all bring home fantasy championships. I'll see you on our live show Saturday afternoon. Stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll catch you all in the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.